Every Sunday I get to talk about what I believe, and I'm excited about this Sunday to do it again in light of this colorful story that Jesus told us. The story that we have just heard in the gospel is not about heaven and hell. I thought I would get that right out at the beginning. Sorry to disappoint all you overly zealous religious critics out there with pencils behind your ears, keeping track of who's in and who's out and who goes where. It is not about heaven and hell. Jesus told this story to make us think, to wake us up about how we meet God, and if we see the last, the lost, the least, the little in this world. The story begins with two main characters. A rich man who was later given the name Dives, which is a Latin word that means rich man. And a beggar named Lazarus, which is a Latin word that means loser. The rich man is a figure of self-indulgence, feasting on gourmet food every day. They didn't use knives or forks or napkins back then, heathens that they were. But food was eaten by the hands, and then the hands were cleaned by wiping them off on hunks of bread, which were thrown away. Which brings us to Lazarus, in contrast, who was outside waiting for those hunks of bread. Flies buzzing around his head as he lifted his hand to swat them away. The sores on his legs, like bed sores, were exposed. And he was so helpless he could not ward off the street dogs which pestered him. This man had been there a long time. There is no dialogue in the first part of the story. It's just a stark disparity. We live in a world of such extremes. Do you remember a woman called Leona Helmsley? The real estate investor and New York billionaire, the Queen of Mean, as she was titled. Well, she died in 2007, and she was placed in a mausoleum costing about $2 million. But she wasn't totally mean, because she loved her Maltese poodle named Trouble. And when Leona died, she left her dog $12 million. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a lot of kibbles and bits. We live in a world of such extremes. Then the scene that Jesus tells and takes us to abruptly changes to the next life. The next life, the hereafter. The beggar passes away. He was carried off by beautiful angelic beings on soft ethereal wings who gently tucked him up and carried him to Abraham, the father Abraham, while Celine Dion sang "You and I Were Meant to Fly" in the background. And the rich man, he croaked. Even in all his purple fine linens, which he purchased at L.L. Bean, he was no less, no more dead than the penniless Lazarus. Death, the most misunderstood part of life. It is not the great sleep, but the great awakening. In that moment, we wake up, we rub our eyes, and we see things the way God has seen things all along. Someone we love dies, and as I look over our congregation, I see many who have loved and have felt the loss. When someone we love dies, we wonder what happened to him. Where is he? What is he seeing? What is he doing? Well, let me share some biblical clues, just a few. Moses and Elijah were dead for 1,000 years They appeared fully alive on the Mount of Transfiguration as they talked to Jesus, and the disciples saw them and recognized who they were. The thief on the cross asked Jesus to remember him in his kingdom, and Jesus answered, "Today you will be with me in paradise." No confession, no special prayer, didn't ask what church he went to. Today you will be with me in paradise. There shall be no oblivion, no unconscious sleep. It's like Jesus was saying, today we hang on crosses. Tonight we shall know each other as two men who died together on Calvary. It was St. Paul who talked about his death, and he simply stated, to be absent from this body is to be present with the Lord. As if closing our eyes here, we open them there. Maybe birth into the next life is as simple as birth into this life. Maybe our earthly life is only the first stage of many, many stages. Then we have the clues in our story. Lazarus remembered the rich man, who remembered and recognized Lazarus. They see, they speak, they feel. Dives remembered his old home, thinking anxiously about his 5 brothers, remembering that they grew up as selfish as he did. And he prayed for them. I think of my own mother, who never went to bed without prayers for me, her prodigal son, going into that fuller life as she did some 40 years ago. Or your mom, or your dad, or loved one, with full memory of you, still praying before the golden altar of God for you on earth. How natural that would be. How close to God they are. I believe your loved one is remembering you, praying for you, still loving and thinking of you to God, because love never fails. For they are experiencing new life in an unbroken continuance of the life begun on earth. They are who they were, only they're whole. They are healed and forgiven and surrounded in light, unencumbered with sickness, sadness, or sin. The sting of death is not with them, but with us who miss them. And these are only a few biblical clues. But I want to get back to our story. The rich man ended up on the wrong side of the heavenly tracks, while Abraham carefully explained to him the realities of his situation. First, you had a whole lifetime's worth of good things, while Lazarus was up to his eyebrows in misery. Second, just in case you haven't noticed, things have definitely been reversed. And then Abraham said, thirdly, there is a great gulf fixed between us. The game is over, Abe says. Sorry, I don't make the rules, I just work here. What was the rich man's sin? Was it being rich? No. Was he cruel to the beggar and kicked him every morning as he went to the polo match? No. Was he an atheist? Was he evil? Was he an Ohio Buckeyes fan? No. The rich man's sin was that he never cared about the beggar. He thought it perfectly natural that Lazarus should lie in pain and hunger while he wallowed in luxury. He didn't see. He didn't hear. He wasn't paying attention. Let me give you an analogy. Sometimes, as young boys will, Sam will be so focused, my young boy, Sam will be so focused reading his Garfield book that I will ask him something and I will get no response. So I will ask again and again and a third time loudly, and he'll finally say, "Oh, I didn't hear you, Dad." And if it's a video game, if your 10-year-old is like my 10-year-old, just forget about it. You could paint yourself green, light your hair on fire, and play Yankee Doodle Dandy on a tuba, and they will not notice you. I know. I've tried. The rich man never noticed. Too focused. Abraham then asked the rich man, "Didn't you get the memo?" "The memo?" Dives said. "Yes, the memo. It first came out in the Old Testament law, then the prophets, and then from Jesus himself. And the memo reads, love God, love one another." That's it. That was Jesus' great commandment. Yes, the memo, pretty clear, but Dives did not get it. Love God, love one another. I visited a website earlier this week. It's called The Miniature Earth, where some analysts reduced the population of the world to 100. They gave the statistics. So to look at the whole world as if it was a village of 100 people. If we did that, we would find there are 61 Asians, 12 Europeans, 13 Africans, and 8 Americans. There are 50 men and 50 women. 47 of that 100 live in the city. 9 are disabled. 33 are Christian, 18 Muslim, and 14 Hindu. 7 of those 100 people are educated at a secondary level. 12 have a computer. Only 3 out of 100 have internet connection. 43 live without basic sanitation. 18 people live without a pure water source. 13 are hungry or malnourished. 14 can't even read. And 18 of that 100 people struggle to live on $1 a day or less. If you have a refrigerator for your food, a closet for your clothes, a bed to sleep in, and a roof over your house, you are richer than 75% of the entire world population. We are blessed. Yes, let us be blessed, but not blind. The chasm the rich man couldn't cross, it was not dug in the afterlife, it was dug before it. Jesus' parable is a cautionary tale. Unlike the rich man, we have a chance to decide how our part of the story will end. We have the power to build walls, to dig chasms, and to turn a blind eye, but there is another way. We also have the power to build bridges, to build ramps over the gaps, and to see the needs of others around us and do something about it. Amen.